Hi there, this is Charlo from Designburo and Lightwave3D, and this is a video showing you how to create some custom objects that you can use in the maniaplanet games like trackmania and shootmania. And in this particular video we're going to create some custom blocks for shootmania. And there are already a couple of videos out there I've seen, but they're all using stuff like Blender, etc. and I think even 3DS. And as they're not really packages that I tend to use, I prefer to use Lightwave. So I thought I'll put in a video on YouTube showing you how it's done in Lightwave, and you'll notice that it's pretty easy to do actually. You just need to know how Nadeo, which is the creator of maniaplanet and trackmania and shootmania, how they've set up stuff. And so I'm gonna guide you through that. It's not gonna be a long video, and I'm not gonna explain to you how Lightwave works. I've got some other videos that do that. You can find them at Lightwave3D.com, and there are way more videos there that show you how to use Lightwave and all its power, and some really great stuff there. But this is going. I will be creating something, and I will be texturing it just to show you how it's done and how easy it can be done. Okay, first of all, you need to make a choice. Are you going to be using textures that are already in the game? Because then you need to know what names they have, so that you can apply them to your own object right in here. Or are you going to build an object from scratch and put all the textures and surfaces on there that you would like to do, and then use them in game? So I'll show you quickly a list of all the files that are available, or files, not exactly, but all the textures that are available, because we'll be using the Nadeo importer. You can find it in the maniaplanet forums, and here you'll find all the names of the textures that are used in the game itself. As you can see at the top, it's the library for Storm, and here you'll find all the textures that are used. Now it's a bit tricky to find out what texture is what, but if you use these kind of textures, exporting from Lightwave to shootmania is like 3 seconds, so you can quickly check if you've got the right texture, yes or no. But the texture floor is like pretty obvious. That's the stone floor, and you have like the wall, etc., etc. So those are pretty straightforward that you can use, and it'll look like one of those walls that you have in game. Okay, but we are going to build one from scratch. Okay, so I'm not going to be using any of these. I will show you in shootmania a little bit later on one of them that does use them. By the way, here you have the library for Canyon, and you can get this list if you start the Nadeo importer, which is a DOS-based program, and you start Nadeo importer and you type space/list, you get this list. Okay, so you can look up what you're going to be needing. But we're going to build it from scratch, and I'm not going to build anything in particular, anything crazy, just something simple so that you can follow it easily. So let's just create something that people can jump on and off, and you can put them on top of each other so that you can create a building or something. Okay, so we'll start off by creating a box. Now if you look at shootmania, you put a simple tile in there in the game, in the block editor, or in the editor. It's about roughly 25 meters in size and about 2 meters high. So what we'll do is we'll create one that is 25 meters in the width and in the depth, and then the height will make it 20 meters. Okay, and I'm just simply I simply added some segments in here that I can do by the arrow keys, or I can do it here manually if I'd like. See, because if I use the arrow keys, you'll see this number increase. But we'll do it like well, like so. Okay, so we commit to this. So now we have like a block that we can use, and we can stretch out some stuff. So in polygon mode, I'm simply gonna click this polygon, and I'm gonna, let me check, take this one as well. I'll press the E key and I'll press H, and I'll just simply, I'll go into down here, selection mode. We'll call this one, and we'll just stretch it out. Okay, so they got something to stand on. Okay, so that's good. So we'll commit to that, and then drop the selection, and let's do the same with this one up here, these two. E to extend, and then H, and let's just stretch them out, something like that. Okay, commit to that as well. So now we got a very simple block, but I'm gonna keep this simple, you know, because we need to go through the texturing and stuff, and we're gonna have to create UV maps. And it's always a bit easier if you have a simple object like this. Okay, a couple of things that we need to do. We need to put this on the ground, so F3 to put it on the ground. Actually, I'm going to put F2, F3, just to make sure, but it centered it, and it has put it on the ground as well. Okay, so now we have that pretty simple object. There's no textures on it, there's nothing done. Now if you're you could create a UV map for this, export the UV map to Photoshop, and just draw in everything you need. But if you have like a more complicated object, then it might be easier to simply create some surfaces on here, put the images on there that you would like, and then bake them to a new UV, or bake them to the UV texture. That's what I'm going to show you, because that's what a lot of people find very difficult, or don't even know how to do that, and it's so easy if you just know how to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give it some textures. Sorry, got a small cold. So if the recording stops like it just did now for a second, you'll know that I'll be coughing my brains out. Anyhow, we're gonna be creating a couple of textures for this, and I'll show you how to bake them on the UV texture. Okay, so we are not going to be modifying this model any longer. You could round the edges and etc, etc. But as I told you, this is not a modeling video. This is how to get this model into Shootmania. So the first thing we're going to do is create the UV texture. Okay, so down here you got a couple of buttons: weight maps, texture, morphs. We're going to use texture. We're going to say new, and we're going to call this, and this is very important because Shootmania needs those names, trackmania as well, by the way. This is going to be the material. Okay, it needs to be an atlas. Actually, we're not going to do that as yet. No, sorry, because we can use segment by surface a little bit later on when we got some surfaces on there, which will make the UV texture way much smoother and easier to read as well, and less glitches in the game. So just leave that for what it is. So we haven't created anything as yet, and we're going to put some surfaces on here. Now what I want to do is I want to keep this simple as well. So I want to first give the whole object a surface, and we're going to call this wall. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I want to give the top surface, at the top I want to give it a different surface. So let's call this top. Don't make it any harder than it is. And is there anything else we want to do? Do we want to give these? Well, yeah, let's give these as well. We'll call them top as well. So Q, and we'll call them top. So now we have 3 surfaces on here. If I go into the surface editor, you notice that, well, 2 surfaces actually, of course. The default, but it'll be gone as soon as you save the object. It'll be gone because it's not used anymore. So we got the top, which is, if I up the luminosity, you notice that is the top. Okay, it's a quick and easy way to check which texture is what, or which surface is what. And we have the rest, which is that. Okay, so we'll start off with the wall, and I'm gonna simply actually I think I have, let me just check. I have a castle brick. Yeah, we could use that. So let's go into texture mode. See, do we need to change that a bit? Yeah, we do need to change that. We don't actually need smoothing because there are no angles in here, and the bottom is not really okay. So let's go in here. It's cylindrical. Let's make that cubic, and I think the size is fine actually. I think we should keep it like this because remember it's 20 meters high, so I think the brick size is pretty good. So we'll keep it at this. We'll copy the selected layer, and or actually we don't have to do that, we just have to put this in cubicle as well. And we're done. So this particular surface has a color texture and a bitmap. Okay, bitmap is like faking death. And we got some smoothing on there and nothing else is on there. So we're basically texturing this the old-fashioned way. Okay, and then for the floor, or the top actually, but what we're walking on, let's do something outrageous. Let's see what we have. So load an image. So we got this one. Let's go into images. Let's see what we have. Well, we could go weird. Let's see if I got some grass here. I do have some grass. Some moss actually. Oh, this is good. Use this grass. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay. Now this is projected down the Y, so we need to tell it that it's projected down the Y, and this is actually pretty good. Yeah, I think it's a tileable texture, so it's okay. We could use auto size, but then it's way too much blown up. Remember, it's 25 by 25 meters, so we need to actually it's 42. All right, at this top we expanded that, so it's even 42 meters. So let's perhaps make this 5. Yeah, that's looking good. So use that texture. And what we could do here, just a small tip for the people that don't know that. Let's go into that grass and we'll clone that one. We'll make an instance. Let me just drag that out so you can see that. So we got a copy. If I go into editing and I'll saturate that and I'll use a little bit of contrast, put the brightness a bit back. Okay, now we've got a perfect bump map. Okay, so if we go into the color and copy this selected layer, go into the bump, paste, replace all layers, done. So we got a little bump on there as well. So this is going to be our object that we want to be using inside of Shootmania. Actually pretty cool, isn't it? Pretty cool. So the wall, it's specularity, it's a bit glossy, it's pretty glossy actually. Do we want that? Who cares? We'll leave it on there. It's just fine. These settings are fine as well. Okay, so now we have an object. Let's save that out. Okay, so Shootmania objects. We'll call this tutorial. Let's leave it at that. Tutorial. What we need to do now is create those UV maps. So, as I shown you earlier, T for texture. Go to there, say new, and we'll call this the material. Okay, that's going to be atlas, and we're going to say segment by surface. Create, and down here it says new map material created. So we got our first UV texture, and if you, for instance, go down here and you say UV texture, this is the UV texture right here. Okay, and that's what we want. Now Shootmania needs another UV texture, but it's identical to this one. So what we can do is just simply go into map up here. So Lightwave has a great workflow. Okay, so the first tab is to create stuff, then to modify, then multiply, then to detail stuff, construct stuff like booleans, etc., etc. And then when you go even further, or you need utilities, or you need to change the layer names, etc., etc., then you go into in there. Okay, but this is so easy. So map, we'll go to edit maps, and we're going to say we want to copy this, and the other map needs to be called light map. That's it. That's all that needs to be done. That is it. There is a possibility for if you have like a really detailed object with a lot of polygons, you can create a second layer, and then you need to name those two layers differently with lot 1 and lot 0, defining which object is low poly and which is high. And then Shootmania can use the low poly if you're in a distance of the object, and when you get closer, it'll turn into the high poly. I'm not going to go into that, but you can find that on the forum. That's really easy, especially in Lightwave, because you can name the layers. You go to layers, you got layer panel, layer settings. I'll go to layer settings. You got a name, so we'll just call this tutorial if we want, and then we named it. But then if you want to do that, what I just told you, low poly, high poly, you just say lot 0 behind it. So I think it's underscore lot 0 underscore lot 1 for the low poly and lot 0 for the high poly, or vice versa. Just read the forums. Don't know, but you don't have to do that. Okay, so we've got an object, we've got it surfaced and textured, we've got 2 UV maps, and that's it. So that's really easy, right? So next thing we need to do is we need to bake these textures. And baking means that these textures are going to be put on this UV map, and then Shootmania can use it. So let's do that. For us, that means that we're going to be jumping into layout. And we're doing that right now. Down here, send object to layout. And there we have layout, and there we have our object. Okay, as you know, Lightwave consists of 2 programs. One is a modeler, where you can create everything, etc., etc. And then you've got layout, where you animate, texture, basically texture and render, etc., etc. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is, because I like to work that way, is make this a quad view so that I got various ways of looking at it. It doesn't really matter where the camera is in this case, so I'm just gonna leave the camera for what it is. So we got the perspective view right here, okay, and it's a shaded solid, so you're not seeing any textures, but there you go. So we have this, and we need to bake this. First thing we need to do is, and what I've done is I've created a template in layout with some lighting setups, but I'm going to do that manually right now. We need to light this because we need to light the textures the way we want it. There are a couple of ways about doing that. One of them is just use radiosity if you'd like. So what we'll do is we'll get that light property, but if you use radiosity, the bomb maps are not so pronounced. But it's your choice. You can put on, if you have a look at the top here, you could, for instance, put a light here, here, and here. So a 3-way lighting, or 4 if you'd like, so that the object is evenly lit. Okay, and then you bake the whole thing. What I'm going to do now is I'm just simply going to turn off, and then it's going to be dark down here, the light, ambient intensity 0 as well. And then I'm going to go into the image editor and I'm going to be loading up images, HDR, and let's put a beach probe. That's a pretty bright image, as you can see right here. It's pretty bright, but it'll do the job. Okay, now we go into camera properties and rendering. I want to be rendering all those items, shadows, transparencies, blah 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 blah. They all need to be there, but I want to turn on radiosity as well. And if I don't do that, let me just put this into VPR mode. It's pretty dark, isn't it? Because I've turned off the light. But if I turn on the radiosity, I'm not seeing anything as well, and that is because, of course, a horse, of course, is a horse, of course. I need to be window, backdrop options. I need to put that image I've just loaded, I need to put that in the 3D world. So I'm gonna use the beach one, and it'll show you here as well right away. And if I now turn on radiosity, you'll see the object. So now the object is lit by the image that's surrounded by it. Okay, so you get a really evenly lit object, but it's a bit too bright. If well, it could do the job actually. It looks pretty nice, but just let it. Let's turn the intensity down just a little bit, or you can do it here in the intensity of the global illumination, or you can go to the backdrop options here, and you could say that the brightness should be about 80%. This is looking a little bit better. It's just a little bit more, 60. That's just fine. What you could also do is go into the surface editor and pick that wall, and let's put the diffuse a little bit more down. Okay, it's a little bit more darker. Let's do that for the grass as well. Sweet. Okay, good. Now I'm very happy with this. I want to be baking this so that I can start using this object. Okay. Now what we need to do is we've got the camera selected. We go into properties, and we're going to say that we do not want to have the perspective camera, but we want to have the surface baking camera. And you get a pop-up, and it says, what mesh do you want to be surface baking? I want to be surface baking the object called tutorial. What UV map should it be put on? Doesn't really matter because they're both the same, but I'll choose material. Okay. All the other settings, they're just fine. So that's done. Now we need to determine the width and height of the texture. How large will it be? Well, the larger it is, the more detail you'll get. If you put this really small, then in game this is going to be really like a bad JPEG image, so to say. So a very good size is 4096 by 4096. It needs to be square, and it needs to be a multiple of 1024. Okay, so if I divide it by 4, you'll notice it's 1024. So I'm going to say times 4. I love Lightwave. A lot of packages don't have that option that you can multiply in. Okay, so what this is going to be creating an image with 496 pixels wide and 496 pixels, 4096 pixels height and width. All right, let's put on some smoothing there, or smoothing and anti-aliasing with adaptive sampling. So let's say 8, which should be more than enough. And let's do the old style Lightwave render engine by oversampling it a little bit. It looks, especially for games, it looks really nice. Okay, so we've got this, and we're almost done. Actually, the only thing that we can do, or actually, it's a better way of doing it. If you look at all the other tutorials, basically, when you want to import this into shootmania, you need 3 texture maps. The diffuse map, as they call it, or the color map, which is this one. Then you need an S map, which normally stands for specular, but in this case, I don't really know what that is, but we'll be creating that by hand. And the normal map, which gives the details of what is sticking out or not. I mean, like the bumps, so that the stone actually looks a little bit more like stone. Okay, and that normal map, when you look at all the tutorials they just take this map we have right here, the color map, and then in Photoshop they make a normal map of it. But that's not really the way to do it, and it doesn't really look nice. I mean, they're obviously happy with it, but that's not a way to do it. The way to do it is we go to press Ctrl F8. We're going to get into the processing for the effects, and we want to add a image filter, and in this case we want to use the composite buffer export. This allows us to basically everything that's rendered, like shadows, reflections, depth, normals, everything you can output with this to separate files. So let's open that up. As you can see here, basically everything you can export. And what I'm going to do is I want to be exporting the normal map. So this gives me an extra image, which is the normal map. Easy as that. Save on F9 renders. Yeah, it's just fine. I'm happy with that. We could also just say that now it's going to go into the image viewer, but we can also say that we want to have an image file, and we want to have that a Targa file, and 32 bits is fine because you load it up in Photoshop anyhow. File output, content. Let's go into renders. Let's go into, do we have a shootmania map here? No. New map, shootmania. Let's call this tutorial N. Okay. So now when we render this, there's also going to be a file called tutorial N, which is going to be the normal map. I think we're done. We've set up everything that we need. The The backdrop is going to be rendered, but who cares? Because it's going to be the object itself is not going to the backdrop is not going to be on the UV textures. Okay, so now the only thing left, shouldn't be doing that with the recording software because F9 is pausing the recording. So I need to go into render, and we're going to say render frame. So now it's going to create the UV textures, and it's going to render on there. First it's going to pass the radiosity, and then it's going to do the frame itself. I'll pause this for a sec. Okay, the image is ready. So now it's been surface baked, so to say. So let's save this image out. Okay, we'll go and save this as a Targa 24 bits content. We had a folder called renders, and then we had one called SM. So we call this tutorial D for the fuse map. So we're not quite finished in layout as yet, so we'll close that down. First I'm gonna turn off the composite buffer export, and gonna use the perspective camera with a size of 128 by 128. This is going to be the image that will be shown up in the editor for Shootmania if you want to choose this block. Okay, so in this case the camera is selected, so I'm going to press T and move that up a bit, and it's going to put this camera in a way that, okay, don't know what I did there, but alright, so that we have the object in the center of the camera. There you go, something like this. Okay, and I'm gonna press no, I'm not, because that's and then the recording render when the frame. So here we have the object, okay, and that's gonna look like this. So let's save this file as a Targa 24-bit, and we'll call this tutorial, and we'll call this icon. Okay, now we're done in now we're done in layout. So we're going to close this out. I'm not even going to save this because I'm not going to be using that again. I hope not, actually. So I'm back in modeler here, and what we need to do here is we're going to save this object, and we'll call this tutorial export. Okay. The reason for it is we need to now address the surfaces correctly. Okay. What I'm even going to do is I'm just going to close all objects. Okay. I'm going to reset everything to what it was. This is back. Okay. I'm going to load it up again. So we've got tutorial export. There we have the object as we created it the first time. But the UV textures are still not used right now. So we go into the surface editor. What we're going to be doing is we're going to change this from a planar view. We're going to be using the UV texture. What UV map we're going to be using? The material. And what image? Load image. Now we go to the renders, and we're going to choose the diffuse one. Okay, here we have the UV map, and now you can see it's put on there on top. What you could also do, actually I'm going to copy this, no, I'm not going to copy use texture. What we could also do, we can remove the bump map texture. You could also rename this to grass, this particular surface. So this part and this part, we can rename that to simply grass with a capital G. Then the importer from the DAO will know that you want to use the original texture for Shootmania. So all the grass that are on the ground in the maps will be put on here as well. So you could do that, but we're not going to do that. For the wall, we're going to be doing exactly the same. So this is going to be a UV texture from the material UV, and we'll be using this part. And as you can see, it's already on there again. And we're just going to delete this. We're not quite finished yet. So basically all the texture we did in the beginning is now gone, and everything has been put on there using the UV maps. But we need to name this these materials, these surfaces. We need to name them in a specific way, and that specific way is underscore TDSN. That's what Nadeo wants. Then the name of our object, which is going to be tutorial, and then underscore, and then we define what kind of material it is. This is also from Nadeo. Is this metal? Is this stone? Is this glass? Is this grass? And in this case, it's going to be stone. And that last part is, if you jump to the wall, you can wall jump on it, and you'll hear the sound of stone. Okay, that's how Nadeo knows what kind of sounds and attributes it needs to put on there. And for the top, we're going to be renaming that as well, and that's going to be underscore TDSN, and underscore TDSN lets Nadeo know this is a custom surface. Okay. Also tutorial, the name of the object is always the same, and this is going to be grass. Okay. Now we're done. Now we finally set this all up. I'm going to save, and the last thing we need to do is, because Nadeo importer doesn't import Lightwave object files, so we go to File, Export, and we're going to be exporting this as an FBX file. You get a small pop-up, just choose the latest version, 2012, and the rest is fine. Just press OK. Where do I need to put that? Well, let's put it in the renders. That's fine by me. And of course, it needs to be called tutorial. Simple as that. The FBX will be added to it. Save. So now we're done. I'm going to press S again, and we're done with rendering, modeling, etc., etc. It's not a really interesting object, but it can be fun in game, right? So we're going to close this up. We're done. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into the folder where maniaplanet is. Now, the personal data folder can be in your My Documents, maniaplanet, blah blah blah. Mine is right here. So you need to find your folder personal data. In that folder, you need to make a folder called workblocks, capital W, capital B. Okay. Inside there, you need to make a folder called storm, telling Nadeo this is for shootmania. And in there, you can create your own folders. Every folder will be in the editor will be another kind of category you can choose, and it can hold various objects, so that it's kind of a structured way of doing stuff. I'm going to be putting it into this hallway part. You can see I've already got some objects in there. So what do we need in here? Of course, first of all, we need the object itself. So I'm going to copy that over. If you don't know this tool, this is Directory Opus, and I really recommend it. This is great stuff. So we've got now the object file itself as an FBX. One thing I'm going to do is I've got here a weird2.xml. And XML is just basically a text file, but in this case it allows you to give some extra details to the editor, telling you that, for instance, the object that you're placing needs to be placed on a grid 4x4. So you get a kind of snapping that you have with the original objects, which makes it handy for you to place. Otherwise, you can place it anywhere, any height, any, and that's not really handy. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to be pasting this. So I got a copy, but I'm going to rename that, and I'm going to call it tutorial. Tutorial. Now I'm going to be opening this up, and you need a good editor for this, like either Notepad or I'm opening this up with Dreamweaver, because Dreamweaver recognizes XML files and they're easily to edit. And I'm just simply going to show you what it is. In this case, we're telling the editor that this is an object with a grid snip of height 4 and so the horizontal 4 and height 0. And 0 means you can put it on top of another one without any spaces in between. That's it. That's all. It's all it says. So we've done that. But now we need to put the textures and the icon in there. So you need to create a folder called texture with a capital T and a folder called icon with a capital I. First we'll do the icon because that's the easiest one. Because that's this one we have here, viewer pane, and that's that image, right? So we're going to be copying that, but we're going to be renaming that just a little bit. So copy as, and we're going to simply be going to call this tutorial. That's it. So now it's in there as well for the importer to use. Now we need to do the textures, but there are a couple of ways about doing it. The importer allows Targa files, but if we look at our normal file, it looks a bit different than the bluish kind of normal files that you're used to. So we need to be changing this first, and if we're changing it, let's just make this already a DDS file, DirectX file. And we'll do that for the other ones as well, because we need to tweak another one, which is called the S1. So let's do that first. Let's open up Photoshop, which is here. Let me just get, where is my, there it is. Put that on another monitor. And let's drag in the normal map. So there you have it. What I'm going to do is here, filter NVIDIA tools. Go to the NVIDIA has been bought by, forgot the name. Forgot the name. So we're going to just search for NVIDIA tools, normal map filter in Google, and you'll find it. You can download it and install it into your Photoshop. Okay. So this is a normal map that you see right here. But Nadeo wants to have a biased RGB, which is this kind of blue thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pump up, whoops, I already pressed enter. But what I did is I pumped up the scale a bit so it's more pronounced, all the edges that we have in there and such. You can see here the grid of the, I think it's the grass, and the wall should be in there as well. So now we've got a good normal map. What we're going to do is we're going to save this as, and we're going to be calling this tutorial N. And I'm going to save this as a DDS file. And as soon as you've imported that filter from NVIDIA, you have the option to save it as a DDS. Okay, so we're going to just simply save. I do not want to have the alpha channels, so I'm going to save this. And you get some pop-ups. Now the normal map, you get some options here, but you want to have that 3DC normal map. We want to generate bitmaps, which basically generates like 10 or 12 versions of this image, but smaller, so that if you're further away from the object, it'll use the smaller one. If you're closer, it'll use the larger one for more detail. So all the other stuff is okay. So I'm simply going to say save, and I'm getting the normal one in there as well. But this takes a while because it's a really huge image, 4096 by 4096, and it's now creating all those different versions of the image. So it takes a little bit, but it should be done pretty soon. So that is done. So this is saved. We're done with that. We'll save that out. We'll close that up. Then I'm gonna drop in the diffuse one, because we need to make the S version of the file, of the texture file that it needs. And what I've seen, if I there's another tool that you can download from the same it's AMD, of course, AMD website. Just search for it. It's a package called the Compressinator. I'll be using it in a sec as well, just to show you how that is done. And what I've done is I've loaded the three files that we need, N, S, and D, and I've loaded them up so that you can see exactly the differences. Now this is the D map, so the color map, and this is the S map, and I really haven't got a clue what they want with that. But as you can see, it's a bit saturated, and it's darker. So let's do that with our diffuse map. Okay, so we're going to image adjustments, and let's start off with the saturate option. Okay, so let's a little bit more pronounced. Okay, then we'll go into image adjustments, brightness and contrast. Let's put the brightness down because it was a bit darker, and let's put the contrast a bit up. That kind of looks the same. Okay, I'm done with this. I'm fine with this. So I'm going to save this out as a Targa file as well, and we're going to call this the S version. So save. 24 bits is fine. Okay, we're done with Photoshop. So let's close that out. Now we're in here. Okay, let's close these versions. We've got the normal map. We already created that. Let me just for a sec put this on that so that we're not being constantly notified. I'm gonna load up the S version, which is this. You're not seeing much, but if I zoom in, you'll notice that, ooh, there it is. And what we're going to be doing is first we're going to be creating some maps for it. Okay, now the S version needs to be a DXT5, and we'll do that later on. First we're going to be choosing, we're going to be generating the maps, and the lowest one is 1 by 1, so generate. And he's created 1 out of 13, see? Now we're going to be compressing, and it needs to be DXT5, and all the other values are just fine. Compress. And it's going to show us two versions, the normal one and the compressed one, if I'm not mistaken. There it is. You're not seeing much difference. And now we're going to be saving this, save the compressed version, and what we're going to be calling this, let me just check content. We're going to be going into renders. We're going to go into SM. Okay, tutorial. This is the S version, so S, and not the Targa one, but it's going to be the DDS one. Save. So we're done with that. Now we're going to load up the diffuse one, which is this one, and we're simply going to be doing the same thing. Or did I just use the diffuse one? Now I'm confused. Which one is this? This is the diffused one, isn't it? No, it's not. No, this is the spec one. Okay, because it's way much darker. So the diffused one. First we're going to create the maps. Okay. Now we're going to be compressing this, but the diffuse map needs to be DXT1. Compress. It's done. File, save compressed, and we're going to be calling this D. Hold on. Oh, it wasn't finished compressing it yet. Save compressed, and we call this D for the diffuse. Okay, save. So now we have our three. We can close this out, and if I go back into directory opus, you'll notice we have 3 DDS files. See, diffuse, normal, specular. I think it's specular. Anyhow, so let's copy these 3 into our textures that are pretty large, but they're in here. Tutorial D and S. So we have our 3 textures, the ones that we need. We have our file, the FBX file. We have our XML file, and we have our icon. Now we're ready to import everything into shootmania. How do we do that? Well, first of all, you go to the forums, you download the NVIDIA importer. Then we're going to be running a DOSBox. We're going to go where my version of shootmania is, which is here. Now the program is called Nadeo Importer. You need to type Nadeo Importer, but I renamed it because I used it so much that I just called it NI. Then you need to tell it that you want to be importing an object. Then it needs to know where the object is, and that's where that structure comes in. So you got work blocks, storm, and it already knows it's going to be work blocks in work blocks. So you're going to be saying here that it's going to be storm slash hallway and then the name of the file, tutorial.fbx. Enter. And now you wait. Depending on how large your files are, it's going to be importing everything, and it's going to be putting that into your personal data and into your blocks. This is where it's going to be. So if I go into hallway, tutorial is already in there. Let me bring that back up. See, it says saved blocks, blah 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 blah. So we can leave this out. And now, of course, you want to know, how does it look? Hang on, I'll boot up maniaplanet. Now, because of the recording software, this is probably going to be a bit slower than normal, but you know the drill. So I'm going to I'm going to start up Storm, and I'm going to go into the editor. I'm going to say new map, advanced. Just, well, we'll take sunrise. Okay, so let's load up that editor. So here we are in the editor, and you're probably familiar with the editor. I think so. I think you are. So we can place normal blocks right here, like so, and we can go into object mode, and you can see that there are various custom objects already created. But there's one. These are all objects right in there, and you can see that 1, 2, and 3 are folders. And I need to go into this one, and you'll notice number 4 is our custom block that we just created. So I'm going to choose that. It's pretty large, so I'm going to put it right there, and there you have it. A sweet old. It's a bit shiny, but we made it shiny. I told you when we baked the whole surface. So let's go into a normal one. Let's just pick. I think we're gonna need the 2. Let's have a look if we can get on there. Yeah. As you can hear, I should have probably put the texture resolution even a bit higher. 4069 might be ×2, and I shouldn't have made this shiny, as you can see here, because grass isn't shiny. And I've stretched it too far. It should have been the size of 1 meter, but who cares? So we can jump on there. We've got the wall texture, which can use a little bit more of the, and we can jump on it. We could use a little bit more depth in the normal map. But hey, we got our own custom-made object in here. Yeehaw! And actually, okay, we've been recording for like 45 minutes, but it was pretty easy to do, wasn't it? And what I'll do is I'll show you an object that I've created previously, but I've created that using the built-in. There you go. This uses the textures that are built in within Shootmania. So let's put it there. See? So you don't have to do all that. You do need to create the UV map, but you don't need to do the baking. You just use the textures that are inside of Shootmania, and you get something like this. Ooh, that looks really good. See? And then you can build your own city, because those textures have been, or those objects have basically been made so that we can easily stamp them, and that's where that XML file comes in. See, we can easily create a city like this. Can even put one on top of there again. Boop. See? And we can take this one. I'm gonna say that we want to have that on top of there if we want to, like so. Looks a bit silly, but we can do that. Or one, and we put another one on top of there. Bit crummy, another one on top of there. That doesn't really look good, does it? But you get the idea. See? So you can start building in some really nice stuff here. Oops. Oops. Well, you get the you can make the grid in the XML file a bit larger so that you don't have those small steps, but you can actually have them aligned pretty well, like so. See? Okay, so we've built our own object in here, and you can go really crazy. I mean, this is actually a spawn booth, or you can build a you can actually build a, what is it, a house where we can go into. Where is it? Oh, there it is. See, you can put some textures on there. There's a concrete texture on this one, and you can go inside, and you can go up the stairs, you can go up another stairs, go on top. There's a nice fence there. Oh my. So there are a lot of neat things that you can do. Alright, good. That's it for this tutorial. We're in it for 50 minutes or so. Hope this helped you guys out and how it's done in Lightwave. And have fun, I should say. Alright, bye bye.